When British Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery dismissed American military planning as hasty and inadequate, he never imagined his own carefully orchestrated operation would end in catastrophe. Well, the supposedly rash American plan would succeed beyond all expectations. This is the story of Operation Market Garden and the Battle of Aachen II autumn offensives in 1944 that would expose the fatal flaw in Montgomery's strategic thinking and vindicate the aggressive American approach he so openly ridiculed. September 1944. The Allied armies had swept across France after the Normandy breakout, liberating Paris and pushing toward the German frontier. Victory seemed within grasp, but the Wehrmacht was far from defeated. Field Marshal Bernard Law Montgomery commanded the 21st Army Group, comprising British, Canadian, and Polish forces in northwestern Europe. Methodical, cautious, and supremely confident in his own abilities, Montgomery had earned his reputation at El Alamein, where meticulous preparation led to decisive victory. He believed in the narrow thrust strategy, concentrating overwhelming force on a single axis to punch through German defenses and race to the industrial Ruhr region. Across the command structure, Lieutenant General Omar Bradley led the U.S. 12th Army Group. His subordinate, Lieutenant General Courtney Hodges, commanded the 1st U.S. Army, while the fiery Lieutenant General George S. Patton led the 3rd Army further south. The American commanders favored Eisenhower's broad front strategy, maintaining pressure across the entire line while exploiting weaknesses wherever they appeared. In mid-September 1944, during a heated planning conference at Supreme Headquarters, Allied Expeditionary Force, Montgomery made his contempt for American methods painfully clear. When informed that 1st Army's 7th Corps, under Major General J. Lawton Collins, had devised a plan to assault the ancient city of Aachen in just 72 hours, Montgomery reportedly scoffed. 72 hours? He said dismissively. The Americans rush in where angels fear to tread. Proper planning requires weeks, not days. His own plan, Operation Market Garden, had been in development for nearly 2 weeks. It was audacious, an airborne carpet laid across the Dutch waterways, with the British XXX Corps racing 64 miles up a single road to seize the bridge at Arnhem and outflank the Siegfried Line. Montgomery assured Eisenhower it would end the war by Christmas. Operation Market Garden launched on September 17, 1944, at precisely 1300 hours. Over 1,500 transport aircraft and 500 gliders filled the skies above Holland, carrying the 104th Airborne Division, the 82nd Airborne Division, and the British 1st Airborne Division. The plan required capturing bridges at Eindhoven, Nijmegen, and Arnhem in rapid succession, while XXX Corps, spearheaded by the Guards Armored Division, drove north along Highway 69, a single elevated road through marshy terrain the Dutch called Hell's Highway. From the beginning, warning signs emerged. Dutch resistance reported 2 SS Panzer divisions refitting near Arnhem, the 9th and 10th SS Panzer divisions. British intelligence dismissed these reports. Lieutenant General Frederick Browning, commanding the airborne operation, reportedly said, "I think we might be going a bridge too far," but the operation proceeded unchanged. Lieutenant Colonel John Frost's 2nd Battalion, 1st Airborne Division reached the northern end of the Arnhem Bridge on September 17, but the rest of his brigade was blocked by unexpected German resistance. The radio sets failed, a chronic problem with the British SCR-22 sets in urban terrain. Frost's 750 men held the bridge alone, isolated and surrounded. Meanwhile, XX Corps advanced slower than planned. German resistance stiffened along Hell's Highway. The Irish Guards led the advance, their Sherman tanks confined to the narrow road, unable to maneuver in the soft polder terrain on either side. At best, near Eindhoven, German forces cut the road, halting the entire column. It took precious hours to clear. By September 19, the operation was already behind schedule. The bridge at Nijmegen still hadn't fallen. Major Julian Cook's 3rd Battalion, 504th Parachute Infantry Regiment, had to conduct a desperate daylight river crossing in canvas boats under withering fire to seize it, an act of extraordinary Courage that won Cook the Distinguished Service Cross but cost the Americans dearly. At Arnhem, Frost's battalion was being systematically destroyed. SS Obersturmbannführer Walter Harzer's 9th SS Panzer Division deployed Tiger tanks and 88mm guns against the British paratroopers. The elegant townhouses along the Rhine became charnel houses. Frost himself was wounded on September 20th. His men were out of ammunition, out of medical supplies, and out of time. 2AX Corps reached the southern bank of the lower Rhine on September 21, but they could not cross. The Arnhem Bridge had fallen. The remnants of 1st Airborne Division were trapped in a shrinking perimeter in Oosterbeek, holding out in desperate conditions. On the night of September 25 to 26, Operation Berlin, the withdrawal evacuated just 20,163 men across the river. The 1st Airborne Division had lost 1,485 killed and 6,414 captured. The Poles and Americans had suffered hundreds more casualties. Operation Market Garden had failed catastrophically. Montgomery's meticulous planning had not accounted for the resilience of a cornered enemy, the friction of combat, or the limitations of a single-axis advance. The operation he promised would end the war by Christmas had instead extended it into 1945. While Montgomery's carefully orchestrated offensive collapsed in Holland, 60 miles to the south, the Americans prepared to assault Aachen, the first German city the Allies would attack. For the Wehrmacht, Aachen held enormous symbolic significance. It was Charlemagne's capital, the ancient seat of the Holy Roman Empire, where German kings had been crowned for 600 years. Hitler personally ordered that it be defended to the last man and the last bullet. Major General J. Lawton Collins, commanding 7th Corps, had just 72 hours to plan the assault. He had no time for the extensive reconnaissance and preparation Montgomery considered essential. The 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One, and the 30th Infantry Division would execute a double envelopment surrounding the city while minimizing casualties among Aachen's 20,000 remaining civilians. Collins knew speed was essential. The longer the Germans had to prepare, the costlier the battle would become. The Siegfried Line fortifications ringed the city concrete bunkers, dragon's teeth tank obstacles, and interconnected pillboxes that had to be reduced one by one. But Collins had advantages Montgomery lacked: overwhelming artillery support, close air support from the INth Tactical Air Command, and most importantly, the flexibility to adapt as the situation developed. The assault began on October 2nd, 1944. The 1st Infantry Division attacked from the south while the 30th Infantry Division drove from the north, aiming to link up east of the city and complete the encirclement. The fighting was brutal from the first moments. German defenders from the 246th Volksgrenadier Division and remnants of the 116th Panzer Division fought with fanatical determination. Colonel Gerhard Wilk commanded the Aachen garrison. Approximately 5,000 troops, including Wehrmacht regulars, SS units, and Volkssturm militia. He had transformed the medieval city into a fortress. Every intersection was covered by machine gun positions. Anti-tank guns waited in rubble-strewn streets. Snipers occupied the cathedral towers and the ruins of ancient buildings. The Americans adapted their tactics constantly. Combat engineers used Bangalore torpedoes and satchel charges to blast through the Siegfried Line bunkers. Tank destroyers provided direct fire support while infantry cleared buildings room by room. Artillery forward observers brought down devastating concentrations of fire, sometimes just yards from American positions. On October 8th, elements of the 1st and 30th Divisions linked up at Rabel's Hill, completing the encirclement. Aachen was cut off. Colonel John Seitz, commanding the 26th Infantry Regiment, sent Wilk an ultimatum: surrender or face total destruction. Wilk refused. Hitler's orders were absolute. What followed was urban warfare at its most savage. The Americans employed a new tactic, using 155mm artillery to systematically demolish buildings suspected of harboring defenders. The psychological impact was tremendous. German soldiers huddled in cellars felt the earth shake with each massive explosion, knowing that at any moment tons of rubble might entomb them alive. Staff Sergeant Mac Morris of the 26th Infantry Regiment later wrote, "We fought for every room in every building. We fought for every floor, every stairway. The Germans defended as if Aachen was Berlin itself." By October 16, Wilkes garrison was exhausted, isolated, and running out of ammunition. The Americans controlled 3/4 of the city. The medieval cathedral, miraculously still standing, became the final German stronghold. Wilkes' command post was in the city's elaborate tunnel system beneath the Louisburg Hill. General Collins made a crucial decision. Rather than level the cathedral and risk destroying one of Europe's architectural treasures, he authorized a final ultimatum. If Wilkes did not surrender by noon on October 21, the Americans would unleash their full artillery might on every remaining German position, cathedral included. On the morning of October 21, Colonel Seitz's interpreter, a German-speaking American sergeant, descended into the tunnels under a white flag. He found Wilkes in a concrete chamber lit by flickering candles, surrounded by wounded soldiers. The German colonel was a professional officer, not a Nazi fanatic. He understood the situation was hopeless. His men had fought magnificently, but continuing would only result in their annihilation and the destruction of what remained of Aachen's historic core. At 12:05 hours on October 21, 1944, 19 days after the assault began, Colonel Wilkes formally surrendered. He emerged from the tunnels with over 1,000 remaining defenders, many wounded, all exhausted. The Americans treated them with the respect due to soldiers who had fought honorably under impossible circumstances. The contrast with Operation Market Garden could not have been starker. Montgomery's operation, planned over weeks, with meticulous attention to detail, had failed to achieve any of its objectives and had resulted in the destruction of an entire airborne division. Collins's 72-hour plan, executed with flexibility and adaptation, had achieved complete victory. The irony was not lost on Allied commanders. While Montgomery continued to argue that his plan had been sound and that failure resulted from factors beyond his control, bad weather, stronger than expected resistance, inadequate supplies, the American success at Aachen demonstrated what aggressive, adaptive leadership could achieve, even against prepared defenses in a symbolically vital city. The Battle of Aachen cost the Americans approximately 5,000 casualties killed, wounded, and missing. The Germans lost nearly 5,000 killed and 5,600 captured. The city itself was devastated, but the cathedral survived, a testament to restraint even in the midst of total war. Operation Market Garden, by contrast, cost the Allies over 17,000 casualties, killed, wounded, and captured. The British 1st Airborne Division effectively ceased to exist as a fighting formation. The operation gained nothing strategically except a salient into Holland that would prove difficult to supply and defend through the coming winter. Montgomery never publicly acknowledged his dismissive comments about American planning, though several staff officers recorded them in their diaries and memoirs. He continued to argue that Market Garden had been 90% successful, a mathematical assessment that ignored the fact that in military operations, as in many endeavors, 90% of an endeavor's objective achieved often means complete failure. The American commanders learned valuable lessons from Aachen that would serve them well in the coming campaigns. Urban warfare required combined arms coordination, overwhelming firepower, and the willingness to adapt tactics to the specific situation. These lessons would be applied at every German city, from the Rhine to the Elbe. For the Germans, Aachen's fall shattered any remaining illusions that the Western Allies could be stopped at the frontier. If the ancient imperial capital could not be held, what could? The psychological impact reverberated through the Wehrmacht. Officers who had believed fanatical determination could compensate for material inferiority began to understand the truth. The industrial might of America, combined with aggressive tactical execution, was unstoppable. Collins received promotion to command of the 7th Corps throughout the remaining campaigns in Europe. His reputation as an aggressive, innovative commander who trusted his subordinates and encouraged initiative grew with each success. Montgomery, despite the failure of Market Garden, retained Eisenhower's confidence and continued to command the 21st Army Group, though his influence over Allied strategy diminished. The soldiers who fought at Aachen received unit citations and individual decorations. The 26th Infantry Regiment earned the Presidential Unit Citation for its tenacity in urban combat. Dozens of soldiers received Silver Stars and Bronze Stars for heroism in the brutal house-to-house fighting. The story of Montgomery's mockery and its ironic aftermath reveals a fundamental truth about military operations. Meticulous planning matters less than the ability to adapt when plans encounter the chaos of combat. 72 hours of focused preparation by commanders who understood their troops and trusted their judgment proved superior to weeks of detailed planning that failed to account for enemy resilience and the friction of war. This was just one of countless untold stories from the Second World War. Subscribe to World War II Records as we continue to bring these forgotten chapters of history back to life.